already have.
Was going to be our first episode. It's not our first episode.
Yeah.
That should be our... Well, not our first episode.
Oh! Hi.
Hello, sexlings. It's just a nickname we're trying out. We found it kind of endearing.
Without the wink, is it better? Let's try it again.
Hello, sexlings. It's far less creepy without the wink. Okay. Hello, sexlings. Thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to be here. So happy to have you here. This is Not Your Mother's Sex Ed, where we provide educational content for all things sex and sex related for almost all ages. My name's Kristen. My pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Michelle, and my pronouns are also she, her.
Hi, Michelle. How's it going today?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm living the dream. We're actually here in person together.
Yes,
Which
I
is
love
really
that.
nice. I always love when we can film in person. We just have a much better dynamic.
I agree.
Not that we're not super charismatic at all, but you know.
I'm excited to have you here again.
Thank you.
Yes, I've missed you.
Yeah, she gifted me with these fantastic glasses when I got here today. She said I have a surprise for you, and she gave them to me, and I am obsessed.
Give us a like. Give us a like for those
Give
glasses.
us a like and a subscribe for these glasses. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. If this doesn't scream Mama Keek Says, quirky old grandma, like, I don't know what does. You know? I'd like a little lapel pin or something, maybe. But otherwise, it's great. Maybe like a glasses chain.
Yes.
I feel like I need a glasses chain.
Absolutely, yes.
So, you know, at some point we'll get these in like my full proper prescription. And I can wear them extensively anytime I want to.
I love it. I love it.
But for now, I dig them.
You know what I also love? If you're watching over on YouTube or if you're just listening, you can probably tell either way. We have a new setup we're trying. We got the mic out. Hopefully our video quality is a little bit better too. So excited for you to hear us and all of this.
Yeah.
Beautiful definition.
We're here to do some sexy ASMR.
We should just channel dedicated to that.
Just sexy ASMR.
Love it.
10 out of 10.
Gold.
We'll get more subscribers on that channel, I think, than on this one. Just awkward, heavy breathing.
Just a picture of our feet. The combination.
Perfect.
Yep.
What more could anybody ask for? That's really
so
my
much
question.
money.
So much. Listen, we're clearly going to be millionaires, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with you? Anything new? Anything fun? Anything exciting?
New, fun, and exciting. Well, I just got back from Vegas. Went there for a conference for my day job, and I got to see Meow Wolf. That is the Omega Mart, which was a lot of fun. I could have spent twice as much time there as I actually spent there.
That's actually really cool. I've seen some of the pictures, and it looks fantastic. I was very unaware that Meow Wolf is like different no matter where you go. I just kind of thought if you saw Meow Wolf, you saw Meow Wolf.
That's kind of what I thought too.
But
and then I heard something about it being Omega Mart versus Convergence Station when I looked up what Convergence Station is.
Is that the one that's in Denver?
Yeah, that's the one that's in Denver.
Okay.
And that was when I was like, oh, they're different. So
Who knew?
I haven't been to the one in Denver yet, but I was going to be in Vegas for probably the last time. I don't have plans to go back there.
It's hot.
And just too much. It's too much.
It's an overwhelming place for sure.
Yeah.
They have good shows sometimes, though. I do appreciate a good Vegas show. You did visit someplace else when you were in Vegas.
Oh, yes. The
And
Zach Bagans Haunted Museum.
I'm going to need, and I think our viewers are going to need, just a very brief description of your encounters there.
So I'm, first of all, so sad that you were not able to make it out because you were supposed to.
You guys, I tried so hard. I was going to try to fly down there just for the night and see the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum too, but I couldn't make it down.
Yeah. So a aside from the massive amount of effort it took for me to navigate public transit to get to the museum, because it was not easy. Interestingly enough, they didn't allow cameras or videos or photos or anything, which on one hand I'm like, okay, I get, but on the other hand, it's like marketed as a museum.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm on the fence on that one. So
that seems like a very Zach Bagans thing to do. Sorry, Zach Bagans, if you're watching this. I'm sure he tunes in every week.
I'm positive. Thank you for watching, Zach. We appreciate it. But I'm just, this is just constructive criticism. So we get in line and we're waiting, and there's like, it's all ambiance at this point. Like, we're in a line, and there are like 2 or 3 television monitors that are displaying Zach Bagans talking about the Holocaust origins of the Dybbuk box.
Ah.
And so it's like Holocaust footage mixed with Zach Bagans footage and mixed with like ghost footage of people interacting with the Dybbuk box and like horrible, scary things happening. So you're just waiting in line while this is playing. And once the tour starts, they usher everybody into this little room. And my tour guide, she was absolutely amazing. I wish that I could remember her name. Love her so much. She was like this little like Texas woman, I assume probably in her mid-30s. And she was all like dressed up in like goth glam.
Love
with
it.
Pink hair. Oh my gosh, she was amazing.
And so I don't know why the idea of like a sweet little southern like middle-aged woman in goth glam.
It's so
tickles me,
so
but
great.
that just tickles me.
Yeah, and so she's telling, she's trying to hype us up. She's like, like you can get VIP passes and go in the basement, and hopefully you make it out alive, and all of this stuff.
Is the basement just an empty basement? Because that is a hell of a way to earn some extra cash.
Oh, it absolutely is. I want to say it might be. I didn't get the VIP pass, so I didn't go into the basement.
So you don't know. You don't know what's
I
in the
don't know
basement?
what's in the basement. But apparently it's the most haunted part of the building. And actually, there's an episode of Ghost Adventures where they're in the Zach Bagans Museum. So you can see the layout and everything.
I'm curious. I feel like he just put nothing in the basement and was like, yeah, that's the scary part. So you can pay extra if you want to go down and sit in the empty basement, but otherwise.
Yeah, you don't even spend time down there. Like, you just walk in, like...
How is it the most haunted part? Aren't all the scary haunted things upstairs? That's
right. It's rumored that there were satanic rituals in the basement. So there's, like, a pentagram drawn on the floor. That's what it was. Yeah. So... Okay. So it was a guided tour. And there were, like, let me just say that if oddities are your thing, this museum was absolutely amazing, and it would have been better marketed as just an oddities museum.
I love oddities.
They have the coolest collection of stuff, and I wish that I could have browsed to my heart's content.
Is it timed? Is it a timed tour?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So the whole tour was a tour guide takes you to a room, tells you what the room is, closes the door, and then you watch Zach Bagans introduce the room to you and tell you about the haunted objects and list any horribly scary haunted things that happened around the objects.
Like on a screen?
On a screen. Like on a TV screen. So in the Bunny Ranch room, which I'm sure that's not what it's actually called, I can't remember. But, so that room has the original bed from this guy who owned the Bunny Ranch, I guess.
Okay.
And he died in that bed.
Okay.
And some other guy almost died in that bed. And it had, like, the nightstands and the mirrors from that bedroom.
Okay.
And you walk in, and at the end of the bed is one of those, like, oak chests that you would store, like, blankets in.
Yeah, like at the foot of the bed or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
We're so sexy today.
Yeah.
You're all burpy. I'm all flummy because I laughed too hard. Okay.
So yeah, at the foot of the bed. And up from that is just a TV screen. Like a large flat screen TV. And so you walk in and they're like, everybody to the back of the room by the giant mirror. Everybody to the back of the room by the giant mirror.
Yeah, okay.
And so you're like, okay. And then the tour guide just like steps out of the room and closes the door.
Oh.
And then Zach Bagans starts talking on the TV.
And he would.
Yeah, it was.
Here's my thing. Like, here's my beef with that, is I feel like if you're going to run a museum and if you're going to have tour guides, like, the joy of being a tour guide is getting to tell each of the individual stories. Like, why are you hiring tour guides if you're just going to be on the screen in every room? Just have, like, labeled and timed rooms that people need to walk into.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, the tour guides were akin to haunted house tour guides.
Mm.
Where they're like, be careful in this next room. And
so they're just, like, working up the atmosphere.
Yeah, that was a lot of what it was. So then we watched this thing, and where he's like, oh yeah, and this guy died in the bed, and this other guy almost died in the bed, and this happened, and you can see this, like, bodily fluid stain, and there's the robe that he wore when he was died, and then the TV lowers into the chest, and the top of the chest closes.
Huh.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. And then it's like, the tour guide will pop back in and be like, when you're done looking around, let's go to the next room. Yeah.
I feel like there's some real opportunities there. As somebody who used to give ghost tours, like, as a job, I'd be really disappointed if that's all I did.
Yeah, it was, and like I said, there was some cool stuff. There's some weird stuff. We saw this hand-carved circus that was like early animatronics. So they had people set up under the stage to like pull the levers. And now it's fully automated, but we saw that was super cool.
That's neat.
Patrick Swayze's tooth is on display there for some reason.
Patrick Swayze had a haunted tooth?
The Chucky doll from the original movie was there. Like not the doll, like the actual, like, in-set production, like, character.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they had cool stuff. They had the, what's it called? The transaxle from James Dean's car.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So they had a bunch of weird stuff. It was cool. It just wasn't really spooky.
That's a bummer.
It smelled terrible the whole time.
Really?
I mean,
like cigarette smoke or like dead?
It kind of reminded me like of the arsenic that they use when they prepare like taxidermied specimens, because they had a lot of taxidermy.
That's probably exactly what that was then.
Yeah, it was.
Well, what an adventure you had.
Yeah.
I do still want to go sometime. But now I feel like I'm going to have lots of things to say about it, and nobody likes an opinionated tourist. So.
Right. Yeah. But it was, it was cool. I wouldn't go again.
How was the Dybbuk box? Was it super creepy?
No.
Or was it just a box in a case?
It was a box in a glass case in a wooden case. So, like... So
like they boxed the box.
In another box.
In another box.
Yeah. So it's like the Dybbuk box, which holds... So the main Dybbuk box is the consciousness of evil. And there's a second Dybbuk box that they don't tell you too much about originally. Like, it's not like the big Dybbuk box, but it's the root of all evil. And apparently there's 10 Dybbuk boxes. And so they have the main Dybbuk box, which is... the actual box itself is what is enclosing the evil. And then around that, they have a glass case, like a museum-style glass case that covers all sides. And then around that, they have a wooden and glass case. So you can't even touch the glass case that the Dybbuk box is in. So.
Fascinating. I just will always remember the episode of Ghost Adventures. And I think it is the one where they're in the museum because they're in with the Dybbuk box. And Zach starts losing his damn mind. He's like, I'm feeling so many angry feelings. I want to punch something.
He also, so apparently he's good buddies with Post Malone.
Oh.
And he took Post Malone to his haunted museum and decided to lift the case off of the Dybbuk box. And so they showed that footage of, like, Zach freaking out after removing the glass case from the Dybbuk box. And Post Malone being like, come on, dude. And, yeah. So they also show Ghost Hunters ghost footage in the museum.
That seems like a conflict of interest.
I don't even know.
Well, that sounds fun. I'm so glad you went.
Yeah, I'm sad that you missed out. It would have been fun to have you, but
You're gonna have to go back to Vegas at least one time. Like maybe on one of our road trips, we can just drive through really quick.
sounds.
We don't even have to
great.
stay. Just in maybe like a midwinter, so it's not 175 degrees. Maybe just like 110.
Did you know that not all Vegas hotels have fridges that you can use in them?
Didn't know that.
I learned that,
Mhm.
and I was so upset that I bought ice cream and didn't have
And
a
you didn't
freezer.
have a fridge. Yeah, a lot of them
What?
don't because
How?
you'll notice a lot of the rooms in Vegas, they'll leave the rooms as minimalistic as possible. So no fridges, like no extracurricular activities, only basic cable, and it's because they want to encourage you to get out of the rooms because as soon as you step foot out of the room, you're spending money on something.
Right.
It's the same reason they don't have like clocks in the casinos or windows in the
Oh,
casinos,
yeah.
or they don't want you to.
We actually had, this was the most irritating part, is we did have a mini fridge, but it was weight censored, and it was already completely full. So if you remove any of the items,
It charges you for
charges you. So you couldn't put anything in the fridge to use it. How stupid. I'm paying so much money for this, and you don't even give me a fridge?
It's the minibar. You got the minibar. Yeah.
So
So dumb. Vegas.
that's my rant.
Vegas. That's all we gotta say. Oh. I don't have a whole lot going on this time. I'm very busy. I have
You
work.
are so busy.
I have other work. I just got approved for further training for my job as deputy coroner. So last week I spent all week training with the local police department, and I got my certificate in basic crime scene investigation.
Awesome.
So that was really fun. And I think it was really good training too, just because even though CSI and like medical legal death investigators have different jobs on scene, most of the time we're working very close together, very parallel, very hand in hand. So it was good to have an opportunity to kind of get a good feel for what they do and what their priorities are, and makes us more able to kind of have that partnership. But that was a 40-hour training, and then I've got a conference this week that I'm going to up in Grand Junction, and then I have a semester-long course that I'm taking through the University of South Dakota? North Dakota? One of the Dakotas on death investigation.
That sounds like
Plus just work. Plus
Right,
also
yeah.
doing the work, plus my other work, plus my husband and my children, plus this.
Yep.
So
Well, we're glad to have you, as always.
happy to be here.
That Kristen charm.
Here's the one other thing I'll share.
Oh.
When I was in Europe this summer, I bought a fantastic pair of socks, and I already showed you these, but they're my official podcast socks, and I just thought that you should see. So this foot is all groinal areas. Just take a good hard look at that. Just groins. And on the bottom it says, I'm perfect, I'm perfect, I'm perfect. And then this one has all boobs on it. I can't show it to you without
Titties. There's some titties.
and I love they even have one with like a mastectomy scar,
Oh.
which is great. They have big boobs, little boobs, black boobs, white boobs, ski slope boobs. It says I'm perfect on the bottom too.
All the boobs. I love it.
And it's my favorite. They're my favorite socks now. They match with my titty cup,
Oh, yeah.
which I did bring. I have it, but I've just been slurping out of my water bottle. So, there's that. But that's all. That's all I have going on. So,
That's all.
that's it. Just those very important things. I have plenty of fun, dead stories, but I feel like this is probably not the platform to
Yeah, probably not.
share this on. But, over drinks sometimes. If anybody wants some good dead stories, you can just message me directly. notyourmother'ssexedpod@gmail.com.
Which is where you can send any of
Attention,
your questions.
Mama Keeks. R.E. Dead. Anyway, what are we talking about today?
So today, in part 1 of our 3-part Let's Talk Sex series, we are going to be talking about the different kinds of sex and answer what it means when someone asks you if you're sexually active.
Which is a big important question, I think. It turns out a big important topic. We already tried recording this a couple of times. And
We haven't nailed it so
we
far.
had a one episode called What is Sex, and we recorded it twice, and neither time did we like it. It was just it's too busy, so we have efficiently cut it down into a couple of different episodes. So hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to follow and a little bit more engaging than us just trying to stuff as much information into your brain as we could.
Really, because if you think about it, the entire podcast is what is sex? Yeah. So,
what is it?
Yeah. So
60 minutes. Go. Well, let's start with the easy stuff.
Okay.
What is sex? What different types of sex are out there? Is sex just one thing, or is it a multitude of things?
So I think most narrowly, most.
I think narrow works.
I think the most narrow definition of sex is when people consider sexual intercourse, which we're calling PIV.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got that from my good friend. We were talking about it once in the car, and she threw PIV out there, and it stands for penis in vagina, which is usually what people think of when they think of sex. Mm-hmm. But it's so much more than that. There's so many other kinds of sex. So on our podcast, you've probably already noticed that we usually stray towards sexual activity instead of the word sex. Mm-hmm. We might have even thrown in PIV a couple times before already.
I want to say we have.
Yeah.
Once or twice.
And that's why. Because of this episode, which you haven't seen us record, but we already have.
Was going to be our first episode. It's not our first episode.
Yeah.
That should be our... not our first episode.
So, PIV, that's one type of sex.
Penis in vagina. That is one kind of sex.
There is anal sex.
Yep. Also thing.
We have, I guess, oral sex, which would be considered cunnilingus for women, and fellatio for men.
Are we counting things like manual stimulation?
I count manual stimulation as a type of sex because it is sexual activity.
I think I would too. Yeah.
Right? Grinding or dry humping, I would also say is sexual activity.
Mm-hmm.
And with or without clothes on. Because they are like that, the scope of sex is such that you can go, like, grinding can exist without clothes on.
Yeah.
So when we were preparing for these episodes, or I guess our original episode, I did a lot of research to come up with something concrete that we can rely on as a definition for what it means to have sex. Mm-hmm. And the best that I found were there are some studies on sexual behavior in a variety of different people. And one of the parameters of those studies, which I'll link in the description, is what they're considering sex to be.
Okay. So
I found a few different varying definitions, but I would like to present them to you, just so that we can, dissect what they are and see
Let's
kind
do
of
it. Do
where
it to it.
falls.
The floor is yours.
So the first one is any mutually voluntary activity with another person that involves sexual contact, whether or not intercourse or orgasm occurs.
Okay.
So intercourse in that would mean PIV.
You know what, though? I already don't like that definition.
Oh, yeah?
And here's my reasoning, is that I don't like the phrase mutually voluntary. Because, trigger warning, rape is still very much a sexual activity. It is just an involuntary sexual activity.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Those
So
are my
then,
thoughts.
yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that one. The other, or in the next one, is vaginal or anal intercourse, not including other types of sexual acts such as oral sex. So that one's actually much more exclusionary.
Okay.
Which I actually disagree with that one.
I do disagree with that one. I will say, though, if they were trying to define the word sex, like we had sex, I can see where they're coming from with the just vaginal or anal, like intercourse, vaginal or anal penetration. But if they're trying to define sexual activity, it is so much broader than that.
Yeah, and especially in the context of a study, because we know that they're having to narrow down what they're studying.
Yeah, very much so. I don't like the phrase having sex at all, really, because I think that it puts the wrong idea in people's mind. Like, it's far too narrow as a general understanding.
Yeah, I actually really don't like that phrase now that you bring it up.
So I'll never, because when people say, hey, I had sex, they usually mean just one thing, maybe two things.
Specifically
vaginal or anal. Like, I know I have a couple of, like, gay men who are friends, and, like, they'll say, oh yeah, and then we had sex, and they're obviously alluding to anal sex, anal intercourse, but I think that applies, but that's the only two things that people think of when they say it. Yeah, we had sex.
Oh, yeah.
We engage in sexual activity.
Yeah. As much as I also kind of just don't like the phrase hooking up, because it's so broad, I always feel a little more comfortable saying that, or fooled around even.
Yeah, we fooled around.
Than we had sex.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
I don't like we had sex. Yeah. Anyway, I agree with you. I think that one is too narrow, particularly for sexual activity. For sex, I get it, but really we're not defining sex, we're defining sexual activity.
Right. And then there were a lot of really weird ways to say sex in these studies, which you wouldn't really think there would be, but sexually experienced was one of them. There was also sexually initiated.
You've been initiated?
Yes, initiated, which I think is so bizarre.
It sounds very, like, ritualistic almost, like you've been initiated.
Hazing-like.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to mix hazing with
Oh, hi. Yeah, guys, guess what? I was sexually initiated last night.
Oh, I hate it.
That has a strong internal cringe factor.
Yeah.
Okay, no thank you.
And then I think the funniest one of all of everything that I found is sexual debut. Like, welcome to the stage.
Like a debutante.
Exactly. And I think it's so funny.
I feel like if you're gonna come out and say, hey, it's my sexual debut, there needs to be headpieces, there needs to be boas, there needs to be swanky music. Like, I'm thinking
there needs to be a cake.
A full drag show.
Oh yeah. Where was my drag show at my sexual debut?
Let's be honest, most of our sexual debuts were not worthy of any kind of show, but
debut is the wrong word.
Debut is the wrong word. I think that gives false impressions of perhaps what that experience might be like to the, what is it? The uninitiated.
The uninitiated?
So.
Oh my gosh. Merch idea. False impressions to the uninitiated. I'm going to put that on a sticker. So there's a few different types of sex.
Yeah, definitely a lot of different types of sexual activity. Like I said before, I really don't like the term had sex, particularly, at least in the context of this podcast, because I feel like it doesn't encompass everything that we want it to encompass. But I was thinking about it just recently, and you and I really haven't had this discussion yet, but I was trying to think of how, in my mind, I bracket sexual activity from, like, non-sexual activity. And I think the easiest way that I've found to think about it is that, for me at least, sexual activity is anything that puts me at any sort of risk for an STI or an STD, so a sexually transmitted infection or a sexually transmitted disease.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, I would consider making out heavy petting a sexual activity.
I would too.
And yes, that does put you in the line of fire for possible STIs, STDs.
Yeah.
You have things like herpes, you know?
Yeah.
Anal sex, definitely at risk. Vaginal sex, definitely at risk. Oral sex, cunnilingus, fellatio, definitely at risk. I think the only thing that we kind of blocked into our discussion that may not put you at risk, or at least a very low risk, is just grinding.
Yeah.
But I think that outside of the risk for STI, STD, it kind of covers all the other general bases we've thrown out there.
Yeah,
So,
genital stimulation
yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and masturbation, like, if you're masturbating yourself and not immediately coming into contact with anybody else or their bodily fluids, like, you're not putting yourself at risk for an STD either, but I would also consider that a sexual activity.
Yeah.
But other than those very few instances, it seems to be kind of a good umbrella.
Yeah, I would say a good umbrella term.
Umbrella term. Yeah.
Or umbrella definition.
Definitional parameter.
There you go.
And a UDP. An umbrella definitional parameter.
Coined 2022.
I want that on a shirt. Thank you.
So that actually is a good segue into what is one of my favorite movies, and I bring this up because I'm sure you've seen Juno, right?
Oh my god, of course I've seen
Who hasn't seen Juno? So
I love Elliot Page.
Elliot Page, yes. Love Elliot Page. Juno's such a good movie. I love Michael Cera. And
so cute. He's just such a darling guy.
Yes. And so in it, Juno is talking about like being at the doctor and the doctor asking if you're sexually active. And so the quote that Juno actually says is,
I'm gonna say it's been about 2 months and 4 days since the sex. Mind you, that's just like a guesstimation. Sorry, how long have I been what? I hate it when adults use the term sexually active. What does it even mean? Can I like deactivate someday, or is this some sort of permanent state of being? I guess.
Yeah, and that's a fair question.
I love that quote from Juno.
It's
like
brilliant.
It resonated so hard when I watched this movie. And do you remember what year that came out?
I don't, but here's the thing. As soon as I hear the year, it's
gonna be too
promptly gonna make me feel old.
Yeah.
So
I know that I had not had PIV when this movie came out.
I also had not.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I don't know if I had.
Keep talking. I'm just gonna look it up while you talk.
I don't know if I had sexual interactions with other people before this movie came out, but I know I had not had PIV. So when I heard that, I fully resonated with that quote because, is it 2008?
2007.
Oh, I was close.
So I was 18 or 19.
Yeah, that would have been 2007. Would have been like my junior, senior year.
So it was right before.
Yeah, actually, now that you say that,
I
right before.
quote unquote lost my virginity, but
yeah, so that really resonated with me because from being in doctor's appointments with myself, from being in doctor's appointments with my mother, and the doctor's always like, so, are you sexually active? And like, at what point, my struggle was, at what point do I say no?
right?
Like how long do I have to go without sexual activity to say no?
Like, yes, I am. I kissed somebody, or yes, I am. We've performed oral stimulation on one another.
Yeah, because they never specify either. They're never like. And I think, and the reason that I think this connects so well to what you were saying about STDs is that really when it comes down to that is what the doctor is most concerned about. STDs, pregnancy,
Yep.
And so we need to tell our doctors a scope in which we have had these kinds of encounters.
Just be, you know what? Yes, I have engaged in sexual activity. I have not engaged in PIV, but I have done X, Y, or Z. They're not asking because they're nosy. They're asking because while you're there for that appointment, they need to know if you need to be checked for certain things for your own health and your own safety. So
yeah, so that's really the important part. And one of the studies that I had read said, you know, you could be considered sexually active if you'd had some kind of sexual encounter within the prior year. I've seen 6 months. I'd be a little concerned at calling 3 months a cutoff. I think that's too soon because STDs can lay dormant easily for 3 months.
Yeah, especially things like HPV.
Oh, yeah.
Can be completely non-symptomatic, but can, if you're a woman by birth, greatly increase your risk of cervical cancer.
Mm-hmm.
HIV very much can lay dormant. Herpes very much can lay dormant. But then when you get down to that, it's like, well, okay, you could say 6 months, 1 year is the cutoff, but if you haven't, let's say it's been 6 years since you've had you've participated in any sort of sexual activity, but if you've never been checked in that period of time for anything, I mean, I think it's so important that you bring it up.
It might as well have been yesterday.
It's been 6 years, but you know what? I've never had an STD panel done, or, you know, like...
Yeah. And I've actually had my doctor discuss with me on two separate occasions, entirely different doctors, entirely different circumstances. One was when I was getting a vaccine, and they asked me if I was interested in the HPV vaccine, which at the time I was like 25.
Yeah.
So well outside of the range for when they recommend that, which is like 12 to 14 or 10 to 14.
Yeah, my oldest daughter just got hers, so.
Yeah. And so I told her that, and then I said, but I mean, I've never had sex, so... And she was like, well, I mean, it couldn't hurt. Like, you're young enough, and if you've never, you know, had PIV, then, you know, you might as well.
Let's get it to you, yeah.
Yeah, and so I actually only made it for 1 or 2 doses because my dad passed away at the time.
Oh, yeah. You had a lot going on.
Yeah, that's a lot. So then when I went back to, like, discuss, like, my 3rd shot or whatever it was, I'd let them know, and they were like, oh, well, if you've been around a penis, then you probably have already, like, had the risk of contracting whatever it is.
Because, yeah, just... one penis, like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think it was in the, like, same context of, like, if you are, like, fondling someone, if you are, like, if you're performing oral on a penis, if, you know, all of those things,
right.
That, like, you're at risk for the STD.
Yes.
And so, thereby it wasn't the end of the world, I should say, that I didn't get my 3rd vaccine.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
I thought they were telling you that, like, you shouldn't because you'd already been around a penis. I'm like, yeah, but if you hadn't contracted HPV, like, there's a million other penises out there.
There's so many.
So, and that's a tough one. A substantial percentage of people, at least in the United States, I don't know the exact number, I'd have to look it up and get back to you on future episodes, but there's a fairly, like, statistically significant number of people who have HPV. Because a lot of the times it does not manifest with symptoms, and so nobody knows that they have it. It's a virus that just hangs out. Just hangs out.
Chills on your couch.
Yep. Chills on your couch and doesn't pay rent. Bastard.
And, like, gets crumbs all over your floor.
Yeah. Nasty. You're nasty.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think the general moral there is that the time frame in which you are sexually active doesn't necessarily matter as much as making sure that you're aware of what precautions you should be taking if you are sexually active.
Yes, and having an open conversation with your doctor.
Yeah.
Like, they're your doctor. There's no need to, you know, shy away from the important things because it all comes down to making sure that you're healthy. So have those conversations. That was the other scenario that I had, is I had a doctor who, the first time I visited them, they asked me if I was taking birth control, and I said no, and she gave pause and was like, why not? And I was like, because I don't have sex.
That's not a thing I'm engaging in currently, so.
And she, like, didn't believe me. And so then I was like, well, I did once, like, a year ago. And she's like, oh, okay.
You're like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Doctors hear plenty of things. Don't be nervous.
Yeah.
Be honest, be straightforward. Advocate for yourself. Advocate for your own health. Like, and most people engage in some form of sexual activity.
Some form or
You
other.
never need to be embarrassed when the doctor asks that question. Just be honest.
Yeah, be honest.
Just be honest.
It's in your own best interest.
It's in your own best interest.
So, before we start to wrap things up, I want to take a brief moment, and I say brief because there's going to be a whole episode about this.
Whole episode.
Yeah, stay tuned. So I want to take a brief moment to talk about virginity and what virginity means. Sore subject?
No, but
Yeah.
absolutely makes sense. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, that does go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Because what is losing your virginity but engaging in sexual activity?
Right? And honestly, when I was younger, and I think we've talked about this in other episodes, when I was younger, my brain was like, virginity is the way to go, white wedding dress, no STDs, no pregnancy. Which, I will say, are all good reasons to not engage in sexual activity.
Yeah.
Except for the white wedding dress. That's
Y'all
just
do,
crap, but-
like, your own thoughts, your own beliefs, your
Yeah.
own life goals and desires.
But then you come to at least the ripe old age that we are in our 30s. And
Big grown-ass ladies in our 30s.
yes. And nobody talks about virginity when you engage in anal sex.
Mm-mm.
Nobody talks about virginity when you engage in oral sex.
Mm-mm.
Nobody talks about virginity when two women have sex.
Mm-mm.
Nobody talks about virginity when two men have sex.
Mm-mm.
Why do we have this one specific term with this one specific connotation?
PIV only.
Yeah, PIV only.
PIV only is losing your virginity. Which is that seems so unfair because I feel like by default then you're saying that, yeah, if you're a lesbian couple, if you're a gay couple, if you're asexual, if you're there's so many other types of relationships and so many other types of sexual activity out there. Like, don't discount those as any less significant of a sexual activity.
Oh yeah.
PIV is not the most significant.
Oh, it absolutely is not. Ask anybody who's done anal, and
Oh God, it's rough.
They're gonna be like, oh.
You know what's fascinating about that though is, so I know somebody, and I won't name them just because they didn't necessarily give me permission to share the story, but I know somebody, he grew up in a relatively religious family. Not hugely religious, but, like, they went to church every week. He grew up learning, like, hey, don't masturbate, don't have sex, right? Like, those are the two things that you shouldn't do. His first relationship was in high school with another girl who came from a very similar, like, home family religious situation. And they relatively frequently engaged in anal sex and anal intercourse. PIA, penis and anus.
My brain was like, penis and ass?
Penis and ass?
No.
Because to them, it didn't count.
It didn't violate.
Religiously, it didn't count. Morally, it didn't count. Like, that was fine. Because he had not put his penis into her vagina. And that blows my mind.
I absolutely agree. It's so crazy that we consider those two different connotations, two different things. And that also puts, again, the focus on the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because a woman loses her virginity when there's a penis inside of her.
Mm-hmm.
But a man doesn't lose his virginity if he puts his penis in someone else's anus.
Right? In any other hole.
Like, other holes are, like, you don't lose your virginity in other holes.
I'm still a virgin. I've had anal sex 945 times in my life, but I am still a virgin.
Yeah,
that makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all.
Also, I've not had anal sex 945 times. I would like to make that very clear. That was a hypothetical.
Sure, Kristen.
For some things, once is enough.
Like I said.
Like I said.
So yeah,
I don't.
that's my soapbox for virginity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should prescribe to it in the way that we currently do. And I think that it's not something that needs to be gained or lost or heralded or anything like that. I really just...
Curious about something. You keep talking. I'm looking something up.
Okay. I really just think that it discounts too many things, and two women can go through their entire lives being virgins just because they've never had sex with a man. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Or
No,
two men can go through life just because they've never had sex with a woman. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. So, I vote we remove that from our vernacular. Just get rid of it.
Let's see. Yeah, so see, this makes sense. First off, I looked up the definition of virginity.
Okay.
And the top thing is never having engaged in sexual intercourse.
Right.
Okay. The Webster definition of sexual intercourse is sexual contact between individuals involving penetration. Does not say specifically vaginal penetration, just penetration. That's it.
So if you're out there and you're doing anal to get around virginity, well, here's some news for you. It's not working.
You are no longer quote unquote a virgin.
Yeah, quote unquote, because it... Don't prescribe to it.
Don't prescribe to it. The other... Here's what I will say, is the secondary definition of virgin typically alludes to just being naive or inexperienced in an area.
Oh, yeah.
And if you prescribe to that definition of virginity, it's strictly the experience of sexual activity that it's talking about.
Yeah.
Not sex.
Yeah. Which... This is unrelated to, well, actually, I guess it's not unrelated to sex because it is still involving sex.
This has nothing to do with sex, but it is about sex, so.
So, Hocus Pocus 2 just came out.
I haven't watched it yet.
I haven't watched it either. I haven't watched it
Okay.
either. This is about the original Hocus Pocus, but it just came out, so it's on the brain.
I love it.
And yeah, that's when we're recording this. And in the first movie, a virgin has to light the black flame candle.
Mm-hmm.
But the definition of virginity in regards to magic is just someone who has never been a part of a magical spell or ritual before. It has nothing to do with actually
With sexual
engaging
activity at
in
all.
Sexual activity.
Oh my gosh. See,
Yeah,
there's
that's
so much
the same
out there.
thing. Virgin blood. Just somebody who has not been part of a ritual before.
I had no idea. That changes the context of so many, like,
Right?
fantastical movies and books that I've read and watched. You just blew my brain. Just right on my ear hole. Good job.
I try.
Good job. No, it's fascinating. I think the moral of that is...
I don't know if we need to have morals for that one.
Don't prescribe to the idea of virginity.
There you go. Yep.
It is
Ding, ding.
100% a social construct.
Absolutely.
And if you're going to prescribe to the idea of virginity, and again, we have a whole episode coming. So much to talk about. Lots of soapboxes that we need to just climb all over in that episode, but stick with the definitions of things.
Yeah.
If you are going to say, I am or am not a virgin, use the actual definition, which is just sexual activity involving penetration. Not just vaginal penetration. Not just penis and vagina.
Yeah.
Not could be penis and anus.
Absolutely.
Could be, I would argue, female masturbation, where you're inserting fingers and or toys
Oh, totally.
into your
That
vagina.
would involve penetration.
Any sort of masturbation where you're inserting fingers or toys into your anus, like
Yeah.
any sort of penetration.
Yeah.
Soapbox off. Stepping down.
And also, you don't need to hold yourself to the status of virgin just so you don't contract STDs.
Yes.
Or just so you don't get pregnant. Like, you can absolutely not engage in sexual activity for those reasons. Those are valid reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But that you don't need to be like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
well, keep your virginity so that you don't get an STD. No, just,
Well, then if you're,
you know, use protection. Or
that's your reason for staying a virgin, is to not get an STD, that doesn't just allude to penetration.
Oh, yeah.
Sexual activity is
Sexual-
penetration. That is all sexual activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But virginity really, for it being a word that is thrown out there as often as it is, unless you are looking at it from like a religious perspective, which often ties into like certain personal moral perspectives, it's not an important thing.
Yeah, it's really not.
It really is not.
Yeah.
Just know yourself, be safe. That is the one thing we'll always end on, is just be safe.
Yeah. And tune into the virginity episode when it airs.
Oh my god, that's going to be a long one. I have got a lot to say. Clearly.
You know what I'm also hoping you have a lot to say about today?
Is it our favorite thing?
It's our favorite thing.
Sex in the news.
I love it. That was beautiful.
Thank you. One of these days, I think one of these little jingles will stick.
Yeah.
But until then, we're just going to sing random things every time. So for those of you who have never joined us before, Sex in the News is one of our favorite segments where one of us, we tend to alternate, will pick a news article, a headline, something out of the news that pertains to sex, sexual activity, any of the topics really that we've discussed, and we'll share it live with the other. So the other one does not know what we're talking about. This is my week to do it. So I have chosen a news article.
I'm so excited.
This one is from CNN. Now, I will say it is a little bit older. I've been keeping this one in my back pocket for a little bit.
I have so many in my back
So,
pocket. My
yeah.
pants are so heavy.
It's from late July.
Okay.
So pants are so heavy.
So heavy. There's so many things back there.
It's from late July, but I think, if nothing else, it perfectly outlines exactly what we're looking to do here with this podcast. So the title of the article is simply 6 Facts You Might Not Have Learned About in Sex Ed.
Oh, I love it already.
That's it. That's the headline. Super straightforward. The article starts off with a pretty startling fact,
Oh,
and
gosh.
I don't think that we have discussed this specific statistic yet,
Okay.
although we do have upcoming episodes that will 100% discuss the state of sexual education in this country.
Mhm.
But it says that as of July of this year, so 2022, only 29 U.S. states and the District of Columbia mandate sex ed.
Holy
Only
crap.
29 out of 50 mandate sexual education. Of those states, only 11 require that the information provided be medically accurate. 11.
I'm at a loss for words.
I
What else is? Why else would you give education if it's not medically accurate?
because, and I think we'll get
I mean,
into
I
this
get it,
more.
I know,
and this is just
but-
like my opinion, but there are a number of states, school districts, schools, etc., who have a sexual education course, but it centers entirely around abstinence. And so there's very little to no medical information that's being given, and the information that is being given is often incorrect or over exaggerated to scare students into being abstinent. So out of 50 states, only 29 mandate sexual education, and of those 29, only 11 mandate that the information be medically accurate, which made me just kind of physically sick to my stomach to read. But they go on to talk about the importance of sex education and why it is that it's important that, you know, we teach these things. These are the 6 facts.
Okay, hit me with
Okay?
them.
And obviously each fact is like a bold headline, and then they have just paragraphs of information after, so I'm not going to go into all of that. Fact 1, sex and sexual health aren't just about the physical act. Number 1. right out the gate. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 2. So far, these are just headlines that match up to like individual episodes that we have already planned out. But
Yeah.
Number 2, normal does not exist.
Yes, I love that.
Normal does not exist. Number 3, sex can be pleasurable. Number 4,
Duh.
STIs are not always visible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I think I got off. Maybe they gave 7 facts. The next one, levels of sexual desire vary.
Okay, yeah.
Which I think is a hugely important one.
And oft overlooked.
And that kind of fits into there's nothing normal. There's no, everybody's different. And then the very last one, and this one is absolutely key. Teaching comprehensive, I'm going to say it louder for everybody in the back. Teaching comprehensive sex education does not mean people have more sex. Okay?
Let that settle in.
Let that settle. Think about that. Teaching comprehensive sex education, statistically, there is no pattern at all that suggests people who have had a comprehensive sex education are more sexually active. They are just safer and smarter about what they choose to engage in. Okay? Okay.
Thank
So
you.
that's a big one. It's a great, we'll link it. We'll probably put it up on our Facebook page too.
Absolutely.
But it's a good one. Read through it.
Yeah.
Covers a lot of the topics that were our straight out of the gate. These are things that we have to cover when we do this podcast.
And you know what I'm hearing is that we're doing pretty good so far.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We hit 100 views.
We did on our first. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
That was our first episode. We really appreciate it. And yeah, like Kristen said, you can find that on our Facebook, NYMSE Pod on Facebook. And then, of course, we're here on YouTube as Not Your Mother's Sex Ed Podcast. Not Your Mother's Sex Ed.
Not Your Mother's Sex Ed.
Yeah, check that because now I can't remember.
Listen, we're up to like 3 platforms now, and it's really Not Your Mother's Sex Ed.
Okay, so on YouTube, Not Your Mother's Sex Ed, and we are working towards getting this on your podcast platforms. It's a work in progress. We're working on it. We're close. We're getting there. So thank you for continually supporting us, and make sure that you, like and subscribe and put on your notifications and find us on Facebook and anywhere that we are. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, please. So tune in. Make sure that you listen to our next episode, which is actually going to be part 2 of our Let's Talk Sex series. We will be talking about how old people are when they start having sex and when they stop having sex. Hint, it's never.
Yes, tune in. That brings us to the end today. If you thought we were funny, found us interesting, like sex, hate sex, are a teacher, are a student, are a sexpert, wants to be a sexpert, think we sound sexy, or think we are cute, or you are just bored and need some entertainment, hit that like button, subscribe please. If you have a question you would like us to answer or discuss on the podcast, or maybe something you are nervous to ask yourself, please email us. That is notyourmothersexedpod@gmail.com. Again, that is notyourmothersexedpod@gmail.com. We absolutely want to hear from you. You can also find us on Facebook, which is NYMSE Pod, or of course just search Not Your Mother's Sex Ed. And then every other week you will find Mama Keek Says, which is a short segment that we do with Kristen here. And in between that, I also have Learning Stuff with Becky, with Aunt Becky. So stay safe, make informed decisions, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Doodles.
Bye.